The American healthcare industry is 18% of GDP in the US and undoubtedly one of the most complex systems on planet Earth. Running a hospital in the United States is no doubt a very, very challenging job, especially in 2026. It never has been easy. A one-trick pony will not survive in that market. Our next guest, Ellen Moss, has been running hospitals for 20, 25 years or so. She has a background in operations, business development. She's been tremendously successful in the post-acute hospital market, rehabilitation, long-term acute care, but she's also worked psychiatric care, psychiatric hospitals, inpatient behavioral health. Today, as you'll see with her, you can't just be good at your job. If you're going to be successful today, you have to be really dialed into your why. You have to operate with passion and purpose. Let's dive in.
You are now listening to the Stark Lane podcast.
Every time you and I have ever talked or you've been evaluating an opportunity, you never lead with money or prestige, like most people do. You always think about your family. You think about being able to give yourself fully to a community or to a company, to a patient base. Can you do that? And would the organization receive you? Are you compatible enough to be able to do that? And I think we need more of that in American healthcare. So I'm just so excited to have you here today talking to us about, I'm going to call it passion and purpose.
I definitely, passion, I would say that the definition of that word over the years has meant different things. So working in healthcare in my position, sometimes I meet a doctor that the best word we can describe for them is passionate. And that might actually be a definition of bad behavior. It could be, maybe they blow up, they get upset or whatnot. We're like, they're just really passionate. For me, I would say it's giving back. It's just been ingrained in me in my whole life. And I accidentally ended up in the positions that I've done over the years. And I can't believe it's been 30 years.
We've tried on some pretty awesome and prestigious and very lucrative roles, but for one reason or another, maybe you have not decided to pursue those. Yeah. And I've always, I think it's cool how you evaluate that. And fast forward, now you find yourself running 2 hospitals in the Midwest in this storybook town in a place where I never would have pictured you being.
I wouldn't have either.
So how did that happen? What do you like about Ohio?
What do I like about Ohio? Well, to your point, it's important for me because I've always been described as very nice. And some people would view niceness as a weakness. I have tried to, as the years have gone on in my years on this earth, view it as a strength. And so niceness may not work in some service lines or some businesses, but in healthcare, it's like goes hand in hand. Whenever I've talked to families or employees, the key thing is what families will describe as how you made them feel, or the patient will say that person was really nice. I remember years ago when my mother's passed on now, but she passed with breast cancer, and she actually passed from a medical mistake. Actually, she was stage 4 breast cancer, but what finally ended it was actually a mistake. But I remember when she was very first diagnosed with breast cancer in the early 2000s, and she was living in a small town, the small town we grew up in. The doctor that she wanted to initially get her care there, and the doctor that provided her an immediate surgery, she had a mastectomy, was a general surgeon. And we're thinking, well, that's the best that's available. I had a sibling that was pushing her to go to a bigger city, to go to a bigger program, which was MD Anderson down in Houston. And through a lot of heartache, and because it's hard. We grew up 4 hours from there, so it was going to take a lot of work to kind of get her to go down there, and willingness. because she was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm good. My healthcare at my hometown is good enough. And it's not that it was bad. It's interesting to go to a big system, and she gets paired up with a breast specialist, that they did at the time. Like I said, this is 20, 25 years ago, that they didn't have that per se in her small town. And the first person, I can't remember her doctor's last name, but she allowed her patients to call her by her first name. And her first name was Melanie. And a little bitty petite doctor comes in the room, fairly young, talks to my mom, who was very personable. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I guess.
Hmm.
And she literally physically touched my mom. And so I would have been, like I said, probably 5 years into healthcare at this time, maybe 6. So I'm still young. I'm in my
Hmm.
20s. And she spent a lot of time with my mom. And when she left the room, my mother goes, she touched me. And I'm thinking, oh, she touched her heart. And she goes, no, Ellen, you don't understand. She said, she physically touched me. She said, through this whole ordeal, and she had gone under surgery and somebody removed a body part, right? A part that she'd had since, she was placed on this earth, at this defective breast, unfortunately. But she said, no, she physically touched me. She said she's the first doctor that actually put their hands on me and touched me. And that just,
Huh.
I've paid attention to that. Like I said, that was my mother's story. That all these years, I can tell the difference between certain physicians over the years, of the ones that aren't afraid to go into the room and have a conversation with a family or a patient, and the ones that maybe will be at the door when they're rounding at a hospital, and they kind of, how's it going, and then they move along. So I definitely feel like, and I was thinking about this the other day after you and I talked, that if you're not passionate, and when you're working in healthcare, if you're not passionate or if you don't have
Hmm.
empathy, it's going to be a tough road. It is just not the type of profession, service line, or job that you can just do the job. It will touch you in some form or other, and hopefully, everybody's got a story as to why they choose this path of going into healthcare. Most people have had some kind of connection with a loved one. Typically, when I've talked to nurses and why they chose to be a nurse, um, but yeah, if you don't have it's going to be a struggle every day, because it can wear you down for sure when you're dealing with it's the highest service line, customer service we can do for anybody is healthcare, and there are times we get it wrong. So you would think at our highest level we would get it right all the time, but so you have to have the passion and empathy to keep going for sure.
It's funny. You call yourself nice, and I do think a lot of people view that sometimes as a negative, but these
Mhm.
the most effective executives I know have that quality. Because I also would not call them pushovers. I would not call them passive aggressive. Just because you are kind and warm doesn't mean you have to be a total jerk at the same
Yeah.
time. Normally, being kind and being direct are mutually exclusive qualities, but for yourself and for a handful of other people I know, they're very direct. You will
Hmm.
never guess what they're thinking, but at the same time, their delivery is very kind and very warm, and it comes from a
Yeah.
good place. And
Yeah.
so, like you can tell me to go to hell, and I'm happy to go there because of your delivery, and I know the fact that you're being sincere and genuine and authentic with me. So
True.
I think it's that's a superpower. I absolutely love it.
Well, and you get that definition as you're growing up, like you're too nice. So what does that mean?
Yeah, yeah.
um, and there's a point where, like I said, in interactions with family, with physicians, with patients, even with staff, just like a little kindness goes a long way. And putting yourself in their shoes, especially the patients that I've seen over the years. I mean, they're I've told families many times that nobody wants to be a patient in a hospital. And if you ever thought you were going to get rest when you go to the hospital, that is not the case. We wake people up 4 a.m., take those blood draws, beeping all night. If you're, attached to an IV pole, I mean, it is not a respite place. It is a place of healing, and you want your body to do what it's supposed to do. It's a great machine that we definitely take for granted a lot of times when you see people with some chronic illnesses that they might have gotten themselves into because they didn't take care of themselves. But yeah, it is not a respite place. So you have this high anxiety situation, stressful, and timed. Everything's timed, whether it's getting the patient ready for therapy or med pass, or you have to, you have change of shift. I couldn't tell you over the years how many times families will say, well, it happened during change of shift. I'm like, why do they know about that? Because,
Yeah.
so yeah, back to the Ohio question. For me, I noticed as soon as I got off the plane up here for my final interview was the kindness that I saw from the taxi driver, the kindness that I saw. I even commented on it during my interview. I said, everyone's so nice. And then one of the physicians that was in the interview had said, well, it's the Midwest. And I've never lived in the Midwest, so I didn't know that. I didn't even know that Ohio was defined as that, because growing up in Texas, you got the South, and then to me, the Midwest would have been those states that go up from Louisiana, not over to the east. So it is a combination, to your point, of like there's a directness here, that you get from the East Coast, which I like, and then you have the kindness of the Midwest. So it's fit really well. It For me, being a little chatterbox, I fit in quite well in my little town of Chagrin. You go to the store and they'll ask you how you're doing, and they have a conversation. So that feels amazing to me.
I love that. I looked at when you told me where you were, I looked at your town online. It
Yeah.
looks like a storybook. It's just
Oh, I can't wait. And I've never lived where there's four seasons. I lived, Texas, Florida. I've lived in Colorado, and I can't even say Colorado had the four seasons per se. Where I lived in Colorado
yeah,
Springs,
yeah.
which was very flat. Most of the town was pretty flat with tumbleweeds and stuff. So it is nice to see the seasons change. And when I moved here, it was snow everywhere. No leaves, but I didn't mind it. I loved the snow. And then now everything's green. I'm like, it is amazingly pretty here. I think it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived. So I feel very honored to be here, and then to be doing what I'm doing. And when you talked about opportunities, and I always just trust that everything happens for a reason and things are supposed
Yeah,
to
yeah.
align the way that they're supposed to. In the group that I'm working for, you build relationships in healthcare, just like you
hmm
and me. We've known each other for a long time.
hmm
The gentleman that had told me about the opportunity, I was a peer of one of them decades ago. And we've always stayed in touch, and utmost respect for him. And then when this came up, he had mentioned, he goes, it's Cleveland. I don't know if you have any interest in Ohio. And I'm like, well, it wasn't on my bingo card, but I'll take a look. And I said, when I went for the interview, I was like, okay, I could see this. And my kids are grown now, and that's tough. I've been a single mom for so long, and my big push being that's a personal situation, was to always keep up and make sure that never came into play per se. When I work each day, I work longer hours
hmm
to make a point. Much to my kids probably are like, I think they would have liked me home more frequently, to say the least. But yeah, I was really selective with the moves because of my kids
Yeah.
and them living with me. But stars aligned, and it's working well. Got two hospitals. They're both rehab hospitals up here, and they're distance wise driving. They're like 40 minutes apart. I'm enjoying the traffic.
Hmm.
Before I came up here, people were talking about, oh, this Cleveland traffic. It's all relative. I've been in Houston, and I'm like, at least we move in Cleveland.
Yeah, yeah.
It's painful in Houston. You can. I was stuck in Rita traffic. That was the worst I ever experienced. Was driving from Pasadena just to get to Conroe, Texas. Normally would have been about a 45-minute drive. It was 18 hours. So
Oh no.
this, nothing. And when I'm in traffic, I'm just blessed to be on this earth, so I don't worry about it.
Well,
Driving
I
around.
mean, after spending 18 hours in Houston traffic, I'm surprised you're
Hmm.
still on this earth because Houston, people don't realize that Houston is very much an international city. It's just
Hmm.
as, if not more diverse than New York City. And
Yes.
what's funny, I think, from my humble opinion of my experiences there, everybody's cool with each other. Everybody gets
Yes.
along. It's a
Yep.
cool cultural melting pot
Yep.
until you get on the highway. Then watch out. That's when things
Yeah.
change.
I will say on a positive, when you put on your blinker, they typically let you in
Oh
Houston.
yeah.
I've lived
Yeah.
in some cities that it's like, I don't know what that is that you just put on your car, but that's a no.
Yeah.
So, well, I think because it's so big, yeah, I think it's the third largest city in America now, but it is
Mhm.
definitely a melting pot. I love the diversity. And
It's fun.
it's getting its props now on food.
Hmm.
So it's become a huge foodie town, and a lot of recognition from, I guess, influencers and such doing food reviews down there. So I do miss the food. I haven't, I've not ventured out too much. What's funny is I was at I love estate sales, and I was at an estate sale a couple of weekends ago, and it was about an hour south of where I'm living, and the antique show that was putting it on is in Chagrin. Um, I've
Awesome.
lived here, yeah, I've lived here since January. I didn't know, and so the lady was introducing me to the owner, and said that oh, he's in your neck of the woods. He's in Chagrin, and he starts talking to me. He goes, "Yeah, I'm located XYZ," and he's saying it like I should know because I live there.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, I live, and it's over here on this area. And I'm like, I just know Main Street. And he goes, and you've lived there how long? I said, end of January, I guess, beginning of February. And he's like, and you don't know? I said, I work in healthcare.
Yeah.
I said, so when you move for a job in healthcare and you work in healthcare, I said, you get it, you get up each day, you get ready, you go to the hospital, you work your day, you come home, and you kind of just unwind and do it again. And he goes, but you have days off. I said, and when you're off, you relax. My goal is not to leave the house. Like it's a grind. So he looked at me like I had two heads, but my friends in healthcare would understand that.
And
Hmm.
speaking of which, you love the grind, and
I
you
do.
you brought a quote to my attention the other day by Viktor Frankl. Those who
Hmm.
have a why to live can bear with almost any how.
Yeah.
And you said this quote has hit you twice recently in two very different instances. Starting at an awards banquet, right? A
Hmm.
couple of nights ago.
Yeah. So I am a crazy TikToker. I love TikTok. And I follow 60 Minutes on TikTok. It's one of the many accounts that I get things that kind of come through my feed. And there was a story a couple weeks ago about one of the former Israeli hostages, and it was one of the young
Yeah.
people that was pulled from the Nova Music Festival, and so had seen that story, and it always, that young man, it just touches me. I mean, those kids were about the same age as my kids, and it's just heartbreaking all around. I'm at an awards ceremony. One of the physicians that I work with, not daily, but we have interactions, and he was part of my interview panel, and then he's now somebody that I rely on for some things that come up. He's at a different campus. Had sent an invite for an award that he was receiving, and I didn't know what the award ceremony was going to be like. I'm envisioning tables, and he's one of many.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But it was actually very intimate, and it was just for him. So he had personally invited the people that he wanted there, which was meant a lot to be included. But as he was going through his presentation, and we're probably around the same age, and he's had a stellar career. Like, I'm getting educated on him through this, and I'm just taking it all in. He mentioned that he had all the success, and around 2019, he kind of got to a point of like a victim of his own success,
Hmm.
and he was faced with the why. And so he put on the screen the Viktor Frankl quote, which this young man that was held captive and unfortunately lost his life in captivity. And his mom had said that he had read that same book by Viktor Frankl, and his why in captivity, although he never unfortunately got to see his mom again, was his mom.
Oh,
And
wow.
for and he had expressed this to another person that was a hostage with him that actually did get out, and his why was his kids. But it was so profound to hear her say it, and heart wrenching, because I can't even imagine. To now fast forward, I'm in the U.S., and there's a doctor who's made his career of taking care of people, and his why, and I love doctors like this, was a patient. That he, when he was in medical school, he saw a patient that was a spinal cord injury, and was a young female that had paralysis.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, in her 20s, she already had bed sores. And the doctor that he was following, shadowing, had said, "Isn't it unfortunate that, quote, we let her get like that?" Not them personally, but that just healthcare in general.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
all she needed was a bowel and bladder program. And his why became this patient. She's the reason why he chose PM&R as a specialty. And then when he was faced with this dilemma in 2019 of like what he wanted to do next in his career, because he's kind of facing burnout a little bit, he went back to his why, which was her, and he wanted to give back. So he's had a great career of being able to do that. So he changed gears, went to a different organization, and it's amazing to see that his why is still pertinent and in the forefront of his mind. And again, the doctors that I really like to work with are the ones that are so patient centered and
Yeah.
have a why, have a story like that. I just,
Not all
I
do. Yeah.
no, they don't, unfortunately. And everybody gets into it for different reasons. We were talking about that the other day, that you know, my why initially has definitely changed over the decades. And so when he was done speaking, I was sitting by one of our colleagues, another physician, and I said, "I think we all needed to hear that tonight."
Yeah.
And because again, my uh, colleague that was sitting beside me is about my age as well, and just a nice reminder. You just, it's tough. Like I said, we work hard. There's the grind in healthcare. There's always there's so many smart people in healthcare, so we're good at analyzing things, benchmarking stuff, and making things better. And I've definitely learned in healthcare that when you focus on something, if you have an issue, if you focus on it, you'll make it better. We're smart
Yeah.
enough. We'll
Yeah.
always improve it. The key is, how do you keep it going? Once you have to take your focus off of something and go to something else, did you fix it enough that you can step away from that and now put your emphasis on something else?
It's one of the reasons I love failure. Failure is
Yeah.
so much easier than success because you
Yeah.
have a clear direction. That didn't work. Let's try again. But when you're
Yeah.
succeeding and you're good at what you do and you're surrounded by people who are good at what they do, to your point, you've got to constantly challenge yourself. You've got to think deeper. You've got to dig deeper. And since you and I spoke the other day, I've been just in a mind melting bender about reevaluating a why and how often you do that and why you would have to do that. And you're absolutely right. I think as you grow, you evolve and things do change. That why does change. I
Hmm.
I think, and I haven't really considered that until that really deep philosophical conversation you and I had.
Yeah, I hadn't either till every decade's different, right? I still have memories of when I was young and, 10, my first decade on this earth, some cool little memories. And then you start getting into your teens. And for me, I couldn't wait to leave the house
Which is
at
a
this
shame
little
because you grew
farm.
up with a silver spoon, right? In your mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, that it was so wild. Yeah, so I grew up in an old home built in 1947, the year of my mom's birth,
Oh, wow.
and my mom got a good deal on it post divorce,
Mm.
and she paid cash for it. And the reason why she got such a good deal on it is it had a broken foundation. And so there were two bathrooms in it for seven kids, two adults, and one of the bathrooms did not work. And my mom and stepdad never had the money to fix it. So there was this reminder every day of this bathroom in the back of the house that had this beautiful tiled 1947 tile shower that we could never use. And so that was, the shower the bathtub that we used to bathe, and we so many kids, we were on a bathing schedule.
Mhm.
My stepdad had a makeshift PVC plumbing on the outside of the wall that he had connected, kind of like those little build-a-pipes that you do as a kid. He had that all running along the outside of the wall and made a shower, and that's what I grew up with. So it was amazing to me. But talk about motivation, work ethic. Learned a lot of all of my work ethic from growing up with my mom and stepdad and the farm, and learned the reward system. There was no allowance. We never had just money that we would get. Our award would be if we did all our chores, we may be able to go do what we wanted to do. But we always had to ask, and many times it was a no. And looking back, it probably was because it would have created more effort for our parents to drive us somewhere. So, yeah, it was a lot of rejection
The,
and then a lot of work. So maybe that's why I like healthcare so much.
that was going to
There's
be
a
my
similar
question
path.
is,
Yeah,
has that really impacted your life and how you operate today and where you are and how you interact with others?
definitely. I'm not sad to get the rejection, I guess, because I
Yeah.
experienced that a lot as a kid. You just keep moving.
Hmm.
And like I said, growing up in a house that needed something every day, you see it that it needed fixing, and we were unable to fix it. It motivated me to be a fixer. I just always have been.
You've used
I
that language in the past when we've talked. You've talked about fixing things.
yeah,
You go into broken companies and you fix them. I mean, you've done it
yes.
over and over and over.
There's always a reason why there's an opening in my position, always. Even in the hospitals that I've been told everything's great, you just need to, maintain it. You go in and you're like, was it? As you kind of dig through and see stuff, because there's a saying, one of the financial guys that I worked with years ago had said that census hides a lot of things.
Hmm.
So whether it's for profit, nonprofit, in healthcare, we do a lot of benchmarking on census. The amount of patients that you have in a hospital. All of your expenses are built around that. The most expensive thing that you're going to pay for is going to be your staff. And then it kind of just goes from there: pharmacy, everything else, the meds and supplies, room and board, you name it. But yeah, I've learned that you can have an amazing quote census number, but what does that comprise of? You may have people in there that unfortunately don't have insurance, and then that can cost money. Or are you spending too much on supplemental staff? If you don't have your own staff and you're relying on agency, like all of this stuff is just the world we
Hmm.
live in healthcare, especially post COVID. But yeah, so fixing is in my blood. Another financial colleague of mine decades ago told me that when I died, on my headstone, it was going to say, "Here lies Roberta Ellen." She was just trying to fix it. Yeah, she's just trying to help. Like, yeah,
You go into these broken situations and you seem to really love it.
I do. It's definitely job security. There's just, I feel like with just even a little positivity, and here we're going back to the niceness, but a little positivity goes a long way.
It does.
It's real easy to say no to people. And many times I've come into hospitals where, again, there's a reason why there's an opening, and the person that I'm replacing, by the end of it, unless they're moving on to something bigger and greater, which I hope, I just haven't seen that too many times.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, they, at the end of their tenure in that position, they're usually kind of tired, frustrated, you name it. There's a lot of excitement. There's always excitement that the next person's going to be better. The next situation's going to be better.
hmm,
And I just feel like if I'm given the opportunity to make a change, that the company has invested in me. And I pause there because I've had people that I've reported to before will say, "Well, it's your hospital. You do what you do it. You do what you want to do." I've never thought of it as my hospital. I've always thought of it as, it's not. I don't own it. It's not
yeah,
named after me. It belongs to a company, or it could be a joint venture. It could be a nonprofit that belongs to a community. Um, and the way I see it is the company has invested in me to make the best decisions that are for their clientele, their patients, their families, their doctors, their staff. And it's my responsibility to hopefully they have a good return on investment.
yeah.
And so, hence, I'm going to try my best to fix everything that initially they tell me, what they need help with. And then as you get into it, you kind of see some other things. But definitely happy staff make happy patients. And it's tough because as I've aged, I will say one of the things that's been on the forefront of my mind the last couple years is when I see nurse aides or nurse techs that are my age. And I'm 52 now. And I just think, wow, it's amazing because it is such a physical job. It's one
Yeah.
thing to do it in your 20s and you're rolling people over, or having to clean them or assist them in dressing and stuff. And it's another thing to do it in your 50s. And the patients over the past decades have gotten a little bigger, especially in America. So it is so physically taxing. So I feel like whenever I see a CNA that's my age, I just want to go up to them and say, "Thank you for your service." Like, it is just, I don't know how they do it, quite frankly.
Well, and so similarly, one of the things that you and that CNA have in common is a 360-degree customer service role.
Mhm.
And not necessarily with customers who are glad to see you.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. And again, a little positivity goes a long way. I've had some hospitals when I managed LTAC hospitals. That was definitely tough. That is the worst situation that a lot of those families will face. And when you get patients from, I've never had a building where I had an emergency room that we had our own outlet or inlet for the patient base. So we always relied on relationships. So those patients are the sickest of the sick that have been in an acute care hospital for a period of time, and they may not be progressing very much, or and you may have some situations where families they're not ready to say that that's it, and the acute care hospitals needs a place for these
Yeah.
patients to move on because they have other people needing those beds. And so, yeah, you'll get families that are just taxed because their loved one may have been in the average length of stay in an acute care hospital is like 3 to 4 nights. So
Yeah.
anyone that stays longer is really sick. And when we would get referrals for them, and maybe they've been in acute care several weeks, so just imagine how sick they are. But that loved one's, that patient's still hanging in there. And then they come to our building and they're tired. The families are tired. The patients may not even be cognitively aware of what's going
Yeah.
on, because those buildings have ICUs. And I give so much thanks that I've had some tough things happen in my personal life over the time that I've been on this earth. I've experienced a lot of loss, and I'm as tough as it was to go through all that stuff. I always try to find the positive, and I'm grateful to have gone through it that I can
Yeah.
apply it to those situations. I had a young case manager one time complaining about a sister that wasn't wanting to give up on her sister. And then the sisters are probably like 70,
Yeah.
close to 80, trying to make a decision of what's next. And this young case manager, who's probably about 30, is like, I just don't know why she won't make a decision. And I told her, I said, you have to realize that that's not normal for a sibling to make a decision on another sibling. And you'll never, if you're so blessed to have a sibling, it's the longest relationship you'll ever have in your life. Nobody will ever know you longer. And, usually it's, if people get married, they have a spouse that makes the decisions, or they have their own kids that makes the decisions. This situation wasn't that. And that
Yeah.
sister
Yeah.
didn't want to give up on her sister. So I just really try to see people where they are and relate and listen. I know in a podcast we talk a lot, but it's so important to listen to them because they definitely have a story, and it is so many times it's the worst time in their life, and they're just trying to figure it out. And there can be a disconnect between healthcare and families in particular, because I work it all day long, every day. Like, I know the referral systems. I know post-acute. Once a patient leaves us, what kind of things they might need at home, or what service lines they might go to next. And a family could just be sitting there like, I don't know any of it. And it's like second nature. It's like another language for us in healthcare. And they just can get so overwhelmed. So
You know,
there's a
it's
lot of options.
what's funny is when I'm working a search, especially CEOs now, and hospital CEOs in particular, one of the big paragraphs on any submission of a candidate for consideration is motivational factors. I call it motivational factors. And those that's where I put all of the qualitative competencies that I think we're looking for that would potentially match with the culture of the organization, the mission, the vision. And as you're talking about what you do on a daily basis and actually knowing about what happens in a patient's room, because I think maybe 15, 20 years ago, that wouldn't be necessarily as big of a thing for the CEO of a hospital. There wasn't as
Yeah.
much of a consideration there. I mean, I think that hard ass who's going to manage everything according to their Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, there might have been a place for that at that time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
today, I don't know if there's as much of a tolerance for that kind of leader.
There's still an expectation. Obviously, you got to know your
Yeah.
numbers, you got to know where you are. There's the marketing piece, relationships, especially if you work post acute, which I always have, of building relationships and where are you going to get your patients from, that kind of situation. But yeah, I've seen over the years it's changed, especially since COVID, in regards to this case in point, when you have a panel interview and there's 6 people on it, which was my last one, and several of them are physicians, they know what they want in a leader. And in particular, they want somebody who can connect and they can read right through you if you're not sincere. And it's not about going in and selling yourself anymore, of
Yeah.
like, and delivering that last, what is the sentence that, in sales, what can I do? So basically, how to close the sell.
Right. Right.
I think people are turned off by that these days, and they really just want a good representation of what they're trying to do. And so when they're seeing a candidate, I would say it's like, can they envision working well with them? And there's not going to be unnecessary drama per se. Or is this person going to add to, or are they going to take away? And then can they align with what their mission values, their what their purpose is for the entity that they're looking for. And if you come in selling hard, I mean, you want to pay attention to what they need, and you should be able to clue into what they need when they're talking to you in an interview, because they'll tell you. And if you go any other path, it just won't align. From the beginning, it wouldn't align.
I'm an
So,
80s kid through and through. And,
yeah.
growing up, and even now, I fight the idea of success being a big corner office, people under you, a
Hmm.
secretary outside who literally manages your entire life and you pay them garbage, right?
Yeah.
That was the idea of success for such a huge population of people for so many years. But I hope anyone listening to this today is listening to you deeply and understanding that one, you've got to have a why, and it
Hmm.
has to be authentic and it has to be real. And based on what you're talking about doing on a daily basis in, keeping the wheels on the bus economically and looking at your expenses and managing your labor and how people are interfacing with patients. And by the way, you know what's going on with patients in their room
Hmm.
and with their family. Oh no, you can't just do one thing well. You have to do it all and you have to
Hmm.
love it.
Yeah.
I think you have to love it.
Yeah. If you don't love it, you'll be miserable for sure. But I think the why is so important, because I will say in 2023, I was affected with a layoff. First time in my life that I've always kind of skated by. There's been adjustments with staffing and stuff. This was the first time that I got hit. And I remember when there were rumors that it was coming down and stuff months before. And I was so confident in myself that in my position, I'm like, I was part of a large company that had however many, 70 different, same type of hospital model, 70 of them across the nation. And
At the time, largest
yeah,
bed capacity, highest revenue provider in the country. There was one other company that had a few more hospitals, but they were much smaller in nature.
yeah,
And
I could
and
see
your
that. Yeah.
organization had been rolled up and purchased by another entity,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
those were drastic measures. It
Huge.
it was not, this wasn't a situation where like, hey, we're going to save a little and cut Ellen. There were a lot of
It was a
really
lot.
talented people,
Yeah.
and it destabilized the entire American hospital market when that went down.
It was mind blowing when I think about it. From a business global perspective, absolutely mind blowing. I
Yeah.
there should have. I'm sure in retrospect there could have been a different path. Especially, I just thought you when you're part of a big company like that and you're removed and you're in another state from the corporate office, you see the movement that happens at the corporate level, and that's usually where changes like that. And I've been through several buyouts.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one was different, and so kudos. I mean, they did learn the business within a year, and then they made their changes. And so I just always thought, I was like, well, it'll happen at corporate, and they wouldn't touch anybody in the field, and they did. And so that was very surprising, but I was in good company. To your point, a lot of people were affected. And it just makes you pause. So I remember that summer of 2023, I'm in a bookstore in Miami, and I'm not much of a reader. To your point, like Viktor Frankl, now I've ordered that book. I'm going to read it since that quote came up twice. Um, but I've heard of him. I just had never read his book
Yeah.
before. But I'm in this bookstore down in Miami and I see this little book that looks pretty. I'm such a girl at heart. I'm like, what a pretty book. And it was called, I'm not going to pronounce it right. I think it's called Ikigai, Ikigai. I think I'm spelling it right. And it's this little blue book. And I thought, well, this could be a quick read. This would be good. I bought it. I read it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it aligns with what we're talking about today because it talks about the blue zones of our world, people that live to be well over 110 years old, and how do they do it?
Huh.
Unfortunately, there's not one in America. God love it. We love our fast food too much, but there's a lot in Japan, and hence that was the title of this book, and it's Japanese, and it's about finding your purpose. It's a great book that I think that young people should read, especially when you're going off to college and you don't know what you want to be per se, or maybe you think you want to be something,
Hmm.
but you're not sure. That first chapter has a circle that is what's your passion, what's your purpose, what's your why,
Yeah.
and then there's all these different subsets that kind of interloop into that main circle. And one of them is, does the world need that from you? And can you get paid for it?
Huh.
And so as you discover your why, and like we said earlier, when I was young, my why initially was growing up in a broken house. I mean, on many levels. Obviously, my parents are divorced. And then I grew up in a house that was broken. And I remember it
Hmm.
twice growing up, Ryan, to give you an idea. Because of the broken foundation in the house, twice, two times, a snake got into the house. Had wiggled its way up through the foundation break. But anyway, to grow up in that and see that every day, and my mom's favorite sentence she always said is, I can't have anything nice for you kids, because there was a lot of kids around. And I remember sitting in my senior economics class in high school. And at the time, I wanted to be a physical therapist. I grew up in the church. One of my Sunday school teachers in eighth grade was a physical therapist. I'm like, that's what I'm going to be. And I shadowed her in high school. I think I was a junior or senior at that time. And it was, I got to visit a hospital. And I remember walking down the hall. She clocked in. She was an hourly employee. I loved the structure of clocking in. And then the walls were all white and so clean. And I had grown up in this dirty farm,
Yeah.
that we're
Yeah.
bringing the outside in all the time. Our bottom of our socks are dirty from the dirt outside. And I remember touching the wall and going, it's just so clean. Like, I love this. So as I'm in the economics class, and it's a wake up call when they're like, the teacher's like, so what do you want to be? And we're all doing the same thing. Everybody's picking whatever they're going to be. And you write it down at the top of the piece of paper, and you write down the amount of money, the salary. And this is the lesson of how much stuff costs.
Hmm.
And so she's like, okay, now put this, where are you going to live? Put this much for rent. Put this much for, first off, you figure out how much you're going to take home. So you learn about taxes, and you're like,
Yeah.
this is awful. They're taking money away. And then, and then it's like rent, and all these things add up. And I remember getting to the bottom of the sheet, and there wasn't a lot of money left. And I was like, well, I need to figure something else out. And because I didn't want to grow up in the situation I'd grown up in, I actually didn't want money to stand in the way of having a family, doing things, and whatnot. So, yeah, I ended up thinking, well, I'm going to go into healthcare management, and actually
Hmm.
human resources was what I was looking at. Um, so I started down that path, and then little by little, like something would happen. Somebody excused themselves from their role, or a boss that I had might have excused them. And then they would come to me and they'd be like, hey, can you help? and I was all into helping. And they're like, can
Yeah.
you fix this? And I would be like, sure. It meant so much to me to be asked. And then, so initially, like I said, it's having that lifestyle, paying those bills, having not grown up with much, that it was just so important for that to have the lifestyle. And then I kind of stumbled into a career, and I'm so grateful for all the experiences I've had in managing these hospitals and people and getting to know families, that I've learned so much from them, that my why has absolutely changed. Yes, I do get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and I appreciate that.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not independently wealthy, so I definitely need it. The I'm glad that my why is more centered on helping people than it's ever been. The more that I do this, the more I want to give back and make a difference there.
Mountaintops. Does Ellen have any new mountaintops?
Hmm. I don't know. You know what? The mountaintop changes too. So initially, when you bring little human beings into the world
Hmm.
that don't ask to be born, you know, but I, I, I wasn't able to have kids for a long time. I tried to have a baby for over 6 years, and was blessed with one, and then got another one 16 months later. Should never happen. And so that's usually how it goes. Like the stress of
Yeah.
not being able to have a baby, you relax. And so I was blessed with the second. I would say, initially, again, working full time, providing for them, that kind of stuff, it definitely becomes a lot of your why. They need me. They gotta, I do this for them, kind of thing. Um, my mountaintop personally is I would just love to have success that uh, is recognized quietly by myself, I guess. I don't need the big accolades. It's going home feeling good about what you do each day. That probably is so simply my mountaintop. And then I really want to see what my kids are up to. I look forward to seeing what they're doing. I've lived a great life. I've experienced so many things at young ages that I probably shouldn't have experienced. I
Hmm.
probably should have experienced them at older ages. Like I mentioned, stuff, going through loss of parents and even a spouse at one point, that I'm just grateful to be here. One of the people that I saw speak years ago, this would have been 2012. I saw a gentleman by the name of Ben, I'm not going to say his name right, Sasse, Sasse, Sasse.
I,
He he was the president of a university at the time, I think in Nebraska.
mhm.
And I saw him speak at a forum that Baylor was putting on, Baylor College of Medicine in Dallas in 2012. I was so taken back by him. I was like, I'd never seen anybody speak like that before. And he was comparing our healthcare system to, as far as an equal comparison, would be some of the countries in Europe and such. And I learned so much from him. And I remember at the table saying, that guy's he's going to run for president someday. Fast forward, he became a senator of Nebraska. He later stepped out of the Senate, and he went and was the president, I think, of the University of Florida
Huh.
briefly. And he was just diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So I saw him recently in 60 Minutes. He's been doing some interviews, and you can, so many times when people are dealing with an illness like that, it's all internal. For him, he's got, I don't know if it's from radiation or what, but you can see his face is affected.
Hmm.
He just looks like it's so painful, but he's trying to enlighten people on his journey, and he's been doing some stuff. But so to see this person that I saw briefly in passing heard him speak and was so impressed by him over a decade ago to now facing his own mortality. Yeah, the mountaintop has definitely changed in this decade. Professionally, absolutely. Want to kill it, do all those things, be successful for the places that I work for, that the employees that look up to the position that I'm in, and they have bills to pay and they need their hours. So it's important for me to keep the census up, so that they can pay their bills. All of that counts every day, all day. And when I see someone that he doesn't even know I exist, that I was so impressed by him a decade ago, that's probably not going to be on this earth in a year. And it's just like, wow, it's those moments of like, what's important. And so, yeah, my mountaintop is a little different. I think I've reached it, honestly, because I'm just happy. I'm happy to do what I do. And I'm so happy and blessed to have 2 kiddos. And again, seeing their successes and friendships, knowing you, I'm good. I think I've hit it. So,
And I think staying in that space, that is a mountaintop in itself, just being able to continue that every day, because it's not necessarily easy. I mean, managing success is way harder than managing failure. And
yeah.
you're so good at what you do. I think you impact a lot of people, like the gentleman you referenced who you saw in passing 10 years ago, who actually impacted your life. And with that said, I know you have a job to do where you're serving others. I've got a job to do where I'm serving others. I think we should probably dive back in, since I asked for an hour from you and I'm well over.
That's okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us today. I think you're going to bring a lot of value to a lot of people.
Thank you. It's always good to see you. And I love what you're doing here. So it's awesome.
Let's get back to work.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
This has been the Stark Lane podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you find the programs to elevate your career and your passions. Now, get back to work.